The Mercury series, How the Mind Learned to Protect Itself and Why This Matters. Most people don't struggle with communication because they're bad at it. They struggle because their mind learned how to communicate in a specific environment and then never got the chance to update that strategy. If you ever felt like you think too much, you struggle to say what you really mean, you freeze, over-explain, stay quiet, or replay conversations later, or you feel misunderstood when you're trying your best, there's a good chance that nothing is wrong with you, but your mind may simply be doing what it learned to do automatically. And that's what this Mercury series is really about. Because in astrology, Mercury doesn't describe how smart you are. It describes how your mind learned to protect itself. This is an idea I'll return to often because it's central to everything we're about to explore. Each Mercury placement tells a story about how the mind learned to protect itself. This video is the foundation for a longer series where I'll explore Mercury through each of the 12 zodiac signs, not as a label, but, an active thing. And before we go any further, I want to say this clearly. Nothing is wrong with you. Your system is doing what it learned to do. Hi, I'm Natasha and welcome to Natasha's Creative Wellness, a space where I share my unique insights on astrology, psychology, and wellness as I continue my own life's journey of exposure therapy. For me, that meant unlearning, reshaping, and growing through small, intentional moments of discomfort rather than waiting until I felt perfect or, comfortable with speaking. A lot of what I share here is shaped by my own lived experience and my natal chart. I have Chiron in Gemini in the 9th house, Saturn in Sagittarius in the 3rd, and Uranus in the 3rd house. So communicating, learning, teaching, and trusting my own voice hasn't always been easy or effortless for me. Go check out your Chiron and Saturn placements. Each video I make is part of that practice, choosing expression over silence, curiosity over perfection, and allowing my voice to evolve publicly. If you enjoy thoughtful, nuanced conversations around astrology and self-understanding, I invite you to like, share, and subscribe. It genuinely helps this channel reach people who are looking for something deeper than surface-level explanations. And if you enjoy learning through storytelling, my book, Trigger to Change, is linked down below and pinned in the comment section. This video is the introduction to a series where I'll be exploring Mercury through each of the 12 zodiac signs. This is not a series about ranking intelligence. It's not about who speaks the best, learns the fastest, or explains things most clearly. It's a series about adaptation. Because Mercury isn't just how you talk when life is calm, it's how you think, interpret, and respond when life interrupts you. And this brings us to a core principle you'll hear repeatedly often. This is not about doing everything. This is about doing the right few things repeatedly when life interrupts you. Mercury shows us what those right few things are mentally and what your system defaults to under stress. Some basic Mercury themes are, at its basic level, Mercury governs reading, writing, speaking, listening, learning, processing information, making meaning out of situations or events, how we gather data, how we organize our thoughts, how we categorize experiences, how we interpret reality. Mercury is not just what you think, it's how meaning forms in your mind. Mercury also describes how you learn best, such as through repetition, direct experiences, logic and reasoning, observational learning, and feelings and emotional associations. None of these are superior, they're just different entry points into understanding. And once again, each Mercury placement tells a story about how the mind learned to protect itself. Communication isn't a straight line. It's not, I say something and you receive it exactly what I meant. It's, I express something through my lens and you interpret it through yours. That interpretive gap, that space between expression and understanding is where Mercury lives. This is why Mercury is so deeply tied to misunderstandings. Not because people are careless, but because meaning is always filtered. Language itself isn't fixed. Words, definitions, and meanings have changed throughout history. Something we take as literal truth today may have meant something entirely different thousands of years ago. So sometimes we're not reacting to reality, we're reacting to an inherited definition. Mercury reminds us that meaning is contextual. Miscommunication doesn't always come from ignorance. Sometimes it comes from translation across time, culture, and experience. Mercury in mythology. In mythology, Mercury, or Hermes, was the messenger of the gods. But he wasn't just delivering messages. He moved freely between the divine realm, the human world, and the underworld. Hermes translated information between worlds that spoke completely different languages. He was also a guide, a negotiator, a trickster, and a translator. Hermes understood that context matters, tone matters, timing matters. Sometimes miscommunication isn't a mistake. It's the natural result of moving between worlds. Mercury as a psychological function. Psychologically, Mercury represents how your mind learned to work. Children aren't thinking, I'm developing a communication style. They're responding instinctively at a survival level. At that level, the questions sound more like, how do I stay connected so the people who feed and house me don't emotionally withdraw? How do I keep the adults around me calm and predictable? What parts of me are safe to express? How do I avoid becoming a problem, a burden, or invisible? Simplified even further, how do I stay fed? How do I stay housed? How do I stay protected? So when a child learns to speak quickly, stay quiet, over-explain, intellectualize feelings, observe instead of express, they are not developing a personality, they're solving a survival problem in real time. And this matters. Nothing is wrong with you. Your system is doing what it learned to do. Let's look into some Mercury patterns in childhood. For example, a child who is frequently interrupted may learn to speak quickly. A child corrected often may over-explain or self-edit. A child whose emotions aren't met may intellectualize their feelings. A child in chaos may become hyper-observant or quiet. A child praised for being smart may tie their worth to being correct. None of these are flaws, they are intelligent adaptations. Mercury forms in response to our caregivers, siblings, school environments, cultural expectations, even emotional safety or the lack of it. And once formed, these patterns don't tend to just disappear, they mature. Let's look at a real-life example, a sibling comparison. Imagine growing up with a sibling who is clearly gifted or a standout. You're gifted too, but differently. Quieter, less visible, less celebrated. And as a child, you don't think we have different strengths. You think, I'll never measure up. There's no room for me here. I can't compete with that. So your system adapts. You may pivot identities. You may stop trying. You may become the observer or the responsible one. This isn't because you failed necessarily, but because your nervous system learned where safety lived. May I repeat, each Mercury placement tells a story about how the mind learned to protect itself. Now, when it comes to healing, this is not about changing everything at once. It's not about fixing your entire personality. Many people approach healing like, I need to change everything about how I think. I need the perfect routine. I need to fix all my patterns first. That overwhelms the nervous system. What this really means is notice 1 or 2 habits that show up when you're tired, you're misunderstood, plans fall apart, emotions rise unexpectedly, and you feel it. These moments are where Mercury patterns activate. Mercury rules mental reflexes, habitual thinking, repetition. So Mercury doesn't change through insight alone. You have to apply action with repetition over time. It changes through practice in the real moments, the pop quizzes that life hands to you. Those are the moments where you can practice this change. My personal integration with movement and Mercury. If you stayed with me this far into the video, thank you. I know this is not short form or surface level, and I truly appreciate your presence. Mercury also rules how we apply and integrate information. I've been a personal trainer since 2014, and if you're interested, my workout and fitness YouTube channel is linked down below. You can also follow me at Natasha Greenwood or fit_Tasha Flex. Movement helped me regulate, build habits, and transfer stress during uncomfortable life events, while still working through my own shortcomings. I lived by two of my own life's mottos after my father passed away when I was 19 years old from cancer. And during this transformative Pluto and Capricorn period, and I have a lot of Capricorn, like cardinal placements and semi-squares, I went through the mottos of life is harder than working out, and with every blow, I only get stronger. Again, nothing is wrong with you. Your system is doing what it learned to do. And with change and healing, it comes through repetition and not pressure, and applying those little lessons and awareness and practicing unlearning, unlearning and relearning over and over and over and over again through discomfort or tolerable discomfort, just like working out. Remember, your natal chart was imprinted before your conscious choice. It spoke in symbols before action even took place. Astrology helps us recognize karmic loops, inherited patterns, and where adaptations can become our gifts. What once protected you doesn't need to be erased. It can be reframed or refined. If you're interested in the intersection of communication, behavior change, movement, and long-term healing, comment "Healing Me Whole" down below. That lets me know when the timing is right to create something deeper and self-paced. You're also welcome to explore my playlist on Chiron, Saturn, and the North and South nodes. I personally find these very important for self-awareness at a deeper level. I'll leave you with the heart of this series. Each Mercury placement tells a story about how the mind learned to protect itself. And when we truly understand that story at a deeper level, then our minds can even process within our bodies and our soul. We don't have to fight ourselves anymore. We can work with the mind and not against it. So thank you for listening, and the following will be the actual series through each of the zodiac signs. Thank you and goodbye. Okay, so if you have Mercury in Cancer or Mercury in your 4th house, this segment is for you. If you see me looking down, I'm just looking at notes because I do tend to wander. And this is going to be in contrast to the beginning intro segment of Mercury in general, where I kind of read a teleprompter, which I normally don't like doing that because it just feels really robotic, but whatever, just leave a comment. Which do you prefer? You don't mind, as long as the message is clear. That's the main reason you come to these videos in the first place. Just let me know what you think. I have Chiron in Gemini, and I have Saturn in the 3rd house in Sagittarius. So if you look at those videos, you'll kind of understand a little bit more about me and why I kind of do this as well. So let's just get to it. So Mercury in Cancer, it's more like your mentality is like you're a protector. It's like a mama bear. It can be a father bear, but it's a protector of someone's emotions, or just in general. You want security. You remember things of like what how did the person make you feel? It's kind of like that. And knowing how to interpret emotions, you know, as if like you're a counselor or you're just very intuitive and you can put maybe words or understanding comprehension to emotions, you know. So it's kind of like a kid kind of knowing what your kid wants because they haven't developed communication or the vocabulary in order to express how they feel. You're going to be a little bit more in tuned with those things in comparison to some other signs. And of course, you have to look at your entire chart. You have all 12 zodiac signs within your own natal chart. It's just depending on what's going on there, you have more energy or more lessons, more karma, whatever it is, going towards certain zodiac signs and certain houses in your chart and how those kind of interplay. If there's conjunctions, oppositions, squares, semi-squares, all those things. You know, so always think about everything. So if you have more Cancer planets, you know, it's going to be even more pronounced. If you have other things, I don't know, like more Capricorn or Aquarius, it might, you know, be toned down, you know, or Aries and things like that. It kind of gives a different twist on these things. But for Mercury in Cancer, kind of how you may have been kind of wired or programmed or raised, you know, as a child, you know, that kind of gave you this kind of mentality, is that you have a emotionally based cognition or thinking. I'm not going to assume that you know all the vocabulary if you are a foreigner, if English is your second, third, fourth, fifth language, if you're really young and your vocabulary isn't that great, and maybe you don't have the best parents, or you're abandoned, you're an orphan, you have parents who went to jail, all those things. So that's why I kind of put a lot more explanation into my videos, because the purpose of them is not for the super educated or people who feel like they know everything already, because they're most likely not to look at videos like this. It's for people who kind of need it, or who are kind of underdeveloped, maybe neglected in some way, or they didn't have the best mentors out there. So that's why I kind of ramble on a lot. Thoughts are filtered through feeling, like feeling comes first and then thoughts. And you're like, well, isn't that everyone? It's like, no, actually, a lot of people are not in tune with their bodies or their feelings at all. So, so this is more for you. Logic and emotion are intertwined, not separate. If something feels unsafe, the mind treats it as unsafe, regardless of the fact. So, you know, it's just going back to, you're going to remember how a situation, a person, place, an animal, or whatever made you feel, regardless if it's irrational, illogical, maybe it's kind of extreme. Maybe you have kind of severe PTSD of something like, you know, where you have to do EMDR therapy, eye movement sensitization, or I'm the worst at explaining super scientific stuff. So just research EMDR therapy. That's really good for PTSD symptoms if you ever need that. Like the anticipation of going outside scares you because something bad happened, you know, but that's just silly. Maybe an event happened outside and now, or it kept happening a little bit, so it trained you emotionally that the outside is unsafe. I'm giving just an extreme example, but it has happened to people. And now you have this irrational feeling that you cannot go outside anymore. You have to stay inside your house. You have to DoorDash everything, or Instacart, whatever. you know, because the outside world is so unsafe that you can't live your life. So, you know, that is an example of feelings kind of come first before the logic. You know, if it is so out there to where it is irrational or illogical. That's just to give just a very extreme example. It does not have to be that way, of course. Let's see. Memory driven perception. So not logical, it's just kind of, I think that's everyone. What kind of thing is that? Strong recall of emotional experiences, especially from the past. You know, Cancer energy does tend to be one of the signs, especially like if you have moon in Cancer, that tends to ruminate about the past a lot, or ruminate about their first boyfriend, girlfriend, or whatever from like 50 years ago. Like it can still come up, you know. So the recall of those memories, of those feelings, of how whatever of the past made you feel can come up more so for you than a lot of the other signs. Your mind stores how things felt, not what just happened. Past experiences shape present interpretation constantly, you know. So, you know, this is everyone. Your worldview, your past experiences, what you were taught, what you were told, how people made you feel, always tends to shape your perception of the world around you and how you navigate those situations. Protective mental orientation, yeah. Once again, it's kind of like that mama bear. You know, Cancer is the crab, so it does have a hard shell but a soft little gooey meaty center, you know, and it's always kind of going sideways. You know, it doesn't directly defend and attack. You know, not like an Aries or a Scorpio. Cancer energy tends to kind of go do this kind of roundabout thing when they feel insecure, uncomfortable, have a hard time bringing up a conversation or something that's uncomfortable, in fear of disappointing, hurting, being hurt, um, things not going their way. Kind of all water signs can have this kind of manipulative way of things. Like you need to be, you expect other people to be a mind reader for you, or just so uncomfortable that, or you have pride and ego that you won't, you know, directly confront and assert yourself or whatever it is, because maybe you already know the answer is going to be negative, and maybe you know that the other person is right or they have a valid point. Maybe they don't, but you don't want them to be right. So you have to go around, or it's whatever your belief systems are, whatever hurt and stuff has happened to you to where now things are irrational, illogical. Maybe you're closed-minded. Those things are not necessarily directly related to Mercury and Cancer, but I'm trying to talk about this roundabout way of thinking, communicating, because Mercury is all forms of communication. You know, as a review, if you skip that first segment of Mercury, it's, you know, reading, writing, speaking, communicating, but it's also miscommunications, interpreting what the person was trying to say opposed to what was actually said, because a lot of people don't know how to put, you know, how they feel into the best words or phrases, or depending on their mood, it can come across as short and abrupt, or the words used can feel cutting, or, you know, there can be a duality to a message, you know. Um, Someone can say, you know, this will end in a funeral, but does that mean your funeral, or does it mean my funeral? You know, so quick interpretation of a vocabulary can create, an assumed response or assumed meaning to something, and it can be miscommunicated pretty easily, So if you didn't quite understand funeral thing, because I got this from a client or whatever, that was kind of said, but it's kind of like it's not clarified. So if someone's saying almost like threatening or being dramatic or whatever, if they say this is going to end in a funeral, someone can assume like, oh my God, this person's going to freaking kill me. Or is it because they're going to be so depressed and feel like they can't get any better that they're going to commit this, I don't know if YouTube will allow me to say certain words, but yeah. So there's a duality to how communication can be perceived or communicated. So, I don't even remember what I was talking about. Their thoughts can scan for safety, belonging, and emotional security. So you may gravitate to people who are more nurturing. They kind of give more elaborate, caring phrases and things like that, because they feel safe or whatever they're expressing. It's like, oh, this person aligns with safety, not like a threat. They think in terms of home, attachment, protection, because Cancer does represent the fourth house of home, family, childhood foundations, childhood upbringing, and emotions, because there's like so many emotions, right? There's like some color wheel of it, of all the emotions. So, it kind of swings and goes through mood changes. You don't feel like doing anything. You want to be lazy. You feel like super energetic and go hard and do everything that you're supposed to do. And then you're like, I'm freaking angry. I can't do it anymore. So very emotional, but this is kind of how your thoughts may be presented, So depending on your mood, so look at your kind of moon sign, can kind of really, intertwine with this kind of Mercury in Cancer or Mercury in fourth house. Yeah, so that's why look at your entire chart and, just become a little bit more self-aware in how you're coming off. If it is, negative and not something that you want to be like, because sometimes it's easier for us to look and analyze at other people, but harder to look at ourselves and kind of pretend we're taking what do you call it? Like well, like a live a video of yourself, or if you're like a celebrity or whatever, and they're just videotaping your whole life. And then you're watching it and then you're like, ugh, that's how I like, or that's how I sound, or oh my God, I do come off as this, that, and whatever. And like, oh, I wouldn't like myself either if I presented myself that way. But, everyone comes from some kind of foundation, depending on how old you are and what you have been through. It kind of, creates its own baked bread or something. You have your ingredients in there, depends on what temperature was, set and how long you're in that oven. Makes you super crispy on the outside and too gooey on the inside, or, just right, or put in there so long that you're stale and dull. Let's see. The mind is naturally cautious and defensive when threatened. Does that kind of think of a crab? Indirect and intuitive communication. So just be careful if you're expecting people to be a mind reader or going around situations, because sometimes you can make things worse, not necessarily better. They often communicate through tone, implication, or emotional expression. What is unsaid matters as much as what is said, because, like, silence, choosing to avoid, choosing to like be stubborn and not saying anything to like almost like punish someone is a form of communication, and it can come off as manipulative communication. So just be cautious if you are doing that, how much, how long, and why you are, using that form of communication to possibly rebel, get back at, get the upper hand. If you actually want to keep that person, if you're dealing with another person or a group of people, a coworker, whatever it is, a parent, sibling, whatever, because that can kind of create, something that you actually don't want because of your own ways of communicating. So just be cautious if you are doing that, and the short and long term result is going to be negative, or not what you want. They read emotional atmosphere instinctively. So, as a water sign, just naturally more intuitive, reading the room, reading people, kind of seeing past that surface or facade of people, or thinking kind of emotionally, strategically, or strategic emotion, by kind of sensing how people are kind of how they are intuitively, or what their behavior is, what they like, what kind of motivates them, and kind of by kind of knowing that, like a parent or a mom, like you kind of know your kid more than they know themselves, and you're kind of possibly manipulating, hopefully manipulative in a positive way, not like in a vindictive or way to just like win or own someone or control someone. Hopefully it's not in that way. But everyone, if you do, or if that is the only way it has to be, then whatever lessons you are meant to learn in the other person or a group of people are meant to learn, I guess you will eventually learn it. But that is not for me. And that does not mean that you do this if you have Mercury in Cancer. I just tend to give these ideas out there to be more self-aware, because we tend to not look at the negative sides of ourselves. And if we don't look at ourselves, then we can't take accountability in order to catch ourselves when we are starting to do something that is negative or makes us look bad, or something that we no longer want to participate in, because you always get a negative result, or you always attract a relationship that gives you the same stupid result that you don't want anymore. Sometimes it's actually yourself that keeps you stuck. So that's the reason why I kind of mentioned these things for each sign. How this thinking style may develop, in childhood or whatever, how it kind of became like this. Um, Early emotional sensitivity, so you could have naturally just been more sensitive. There's nothing wrong with that. So this is a defense mechanism or a way of survival. As children, they were highly receptive to emotional environments. They absorbed moods, tensions, and subtle relational shifts, in the room, in the home environment where you kind of usually are kind of stuck in for the most part. And you can just kind of tell the mood swings and the tones of your parents, siblings, whoever was living with you, whoever took care of you, and kind of having to navigate around that. Maybe you didn't feel safe to assert yourself or say what you actually wanted, or maybe you said something freely and childlike and you were scolded for it. And so you learned over time that you can't just say whatever you want, or you have to be cautious and careful with the timing of when you say things or when to refrain from communicating and all these things. This is how it kind of possibly developed in childhood, and then you just kind of carried it on, through adult life. If you just naturally do it because you perfected it over and over and over again, every day, every week, every year, growing up in that environment. And if it's negatively serving you, this is now the time to take accountability, be an adult, and start unlearning those things, because you can be mad at whoever forever, but then you're not going to live your life. You're just going to be a sad, mopey sadness crab in the water. But that does not have to be you. Let's see. Their nervous system learned to monitor emotional climate for safety. Same thing what I talked about. Adaptation through emotional attunement. Kind of the same thing. They learn to anticipate needs, reactions, or changes in others. I kind of explained that. Understanding emotional undercurrents became survival intelligence. Kind of explained that already. The mind developed strong pattern recognition tied to attachment. That's conditioning in childhood, and you just kind of recognize the patterns of your parents or whoever took care of you. Usually, sometimes it's just one person, but if there was two, or sometimes, people have a whole team, who live under the house, and you can tell the personalities and moods of each individual. Like grandma is always warm and welcoming, and dad is always avoidant, busy working, and not in the mood to, that's not the person you want to go to. They're only good to go to when you're asking for homework or something like that. So you learn who is a safe person to do certain things with. Very normal. Certain kids will always ask mom if they want to go buy something or go shopping, but they're not going to ask dad, to do those things, because they learn certain behaviors and what the roles of each parent, what they tend to do and what they just don't do at all. Let's see. Learning that safety is relational. Emotional security depended on connection, which is like everyone. Of course, emotional security depends on connection. Otherwise, well, you would just feel emotionally safe all by yourself. Well, that can be a thing too. But I guess like finding a connection that feels safe. Otherwise, what's the point of having that connection? Unless you're using it strategically for like business or something like that. So I would assume, I do not. Oh, well, I have Mercury in the 4th house. So I'm talking about myself too. But mine is in Capricorn. But just you want connections that feel emotionally safe. I would assume that is safe to say. Who wouldn't? The mind learned, if I stay aware, I stay safe, which, yeah, I agree with that. Some childhood environments and core wounds that you may have experienced in order to have this placement. Emotionally charged or unpredictable home. Caregivers may have been nurturing but inconsistent or emotionally overwhelmed. The child may have taken on emotional responsibility early. You have to be responsible for your own emotions, and because no one's going to care for your boo-boos all the time. Boundaries between their feelings and others' feelings may have blurred. Being like a sponge. So all the water signs do have this kind of thing of, it's hard to distinguish boundaries a little bit. Just think like two different kind of fluids, like oil and water. They're both fluids, but and they kind of sit together, but oil will, I think it floats. It's above water, above, or it sinks below. I think it floats on top. Yeah, oil floats on top. But sometimes it's kind of, if you think, like, sadly, in the ocean, if you see oil splattered out there off the boat or whatever, and you see this kind of glistening, very thin sheet of oil in the ocean, but it's kind of like you can't really grasp it, or it's really hard. You can't, like, catch it and collect it very easily. Maybe there's some magical machine out there that does that, but not easy. You can't just, like, oh, I want to separate the oil from the ocean water or whatever. It just kind of, like, slips out. So has a hard time with boundary setting or, separating. You just don't see it. It's not distinctly separate, like Aquarius or something like that. Like a possible wound would be like, I must protect myself emotionally, fear of emotional abandonment or instability, heightened sensitivity to rejection, distance, or withdrawal, because it's going to be like, oh my God, I'm going to die. Like if your parent starts doing that, it's like, oh, what do I have to do in order to survive or feel like I'm still going to get attention, right? You haven't, like, completely withdrawn, right? I'm still going to get food because I don't have a driver's license at the age of 4, to go out and go get those things. So there is that kind of feeling of like, are you going to do your job as a parent? Because I have to survive, so there's that feeling there, possibly. The child learns to guard their inner world, it's just a protector, crab shell, soft, squishy happiness inside. Attachment-based identity. The child learns to guard their inner. I already said that. Self-worth may be tied to being needed, loved, or emotionally connected. It's that mama bear nurturing thing. Like, you feel like if you're not needed, if you can't help, if you're you can't, give or possibly overgive. Hopefully you distinguish that boundary of overgiving to the point of self-abandonment, self-defeat, or draining yourself so much, depleting yourself so much that you have nothing for yourself. Hopefully, depending on how old you are, maybe you're still going through that, you don't do that. Because there can be that overgiving, nurturing, like a mom is going to give everything to their kid. Well, most mothers, I can't say all mothers, but there's that instinctive motherly care of like, oh, I need to give my love. I need to sacrifice my time. What I would normally give to myself, I need to give to my kid in order for them to survive and feel safe in the world and not hurt themselves. And because they don't know the scariness of the world yet, I need to protect them. I need to protect their emotions. I need to protect their psychology and development so they feel safe to explore, feel safe to learn and want to learn more. You feel like you need to be that mama bear, papa bear, whoever. It doesn't matter. You don't have to be female to do those things. But you want to do that. So you tend to overgive because you have that kind of love in order to make sure that kid survives or feels safe, because possibly you understand how it feels to not necessarily feel that way, or feel abandoned or feel like you had to be responsible super early in life to where you kind of felt alone and you had to take on the burden of just doing more. And so the counter effect of this can be possibly overgiving or, wanting to mother, even if it's to people who they're grown up enough to do that themselves, and they should, you have to make sure you don't kind of overdo it, or make sure you're not like getting the short end of the stick or being taken advantage of. I know that was freaking long. um, Emotional security becomes central to mental stability. So if you don't feel emotionally secure, there's no way you can feel mentally stable. Like you won't be able to function. You're going to go into psychosis. Just read my book. It'll be linked down below. So yeah, that feeling is going to be super tied into your emotions, your mental health, your stability in general. Can you even function? Can you even go to work and do your job? It's kind of meshed in there. Adult psychological patterns and struggles that this placement may have: emotional reactivity in thinking. Feelings can override objectivity. Mood strongly influences perception and interpretation. So depending on how your mood is, how emotionally stable you are, you can hear something and maybe misinterpret it. And same goes for the other person. That can be anyone, but depending on your mood, can make you feel like more short and abrupt, or like your cutoff game is like super high that day, and on other days it's like, oh, you're very welcoming and patient, and like, well, what do you mean by that exactly? When you said this, did you mean this or this? So it depends on your mood, and hopefully you're not too moody. So that depends on how much possibly earth signs, if you have in your chart, if you have any. Otherwise you may feel more ungrounded and more watery, like a turbulent, like shaking the bucket of water. If you have like a ton of like Gemini, like mutable air, or Sagittarius, mutable fire, and you have a lot of those things and nothing to kind of ground you, it can be like, so you have to find some kind of daily practice or something that kind of helps tame that beast if, that's affecting you negatively. Difficult to separate past emotional memory from present reality. So this can be like depression, ruminating thoughts, kind of zoning out, dissociating, things like that. Rumination and nostalgia. The mind revisits the past frequently. May replay conversations or emotional events repeatedly. Like ruminating, like kind of like depression. You get stuck in the past, ruminate of how things were, how things could have been, what could have been better, or feeling guilty, ashamed, or just feeling stuck. Back there are possibilities with the sign. Hopefully it's not the majority of the time, but those things can happen more so with the kind of Cancer placements. Letting go can feel like losing a part of themselves. Think of, just Cancer is like what you feel at home with, whatever you define home to be, because it doesn't have to literally be your family, your born family, or your chosen family. It can be your chosen friends, your chosen whatever, or your pets or whatever. That's whatever is home to you that makes you feel like, makes you feel like you can be yourself, you can let loose, you can, not perform or please other people or put on a good show or anything like that. You can actually just be at peace with yourself. Like, why would anyone kind of want to lose that, whatever you define that to be? So letting go of that, like if you feel like, oh my God, what once was something you believed to feel like home, or what you perceived it could be your belief system or whatever, and something happened, something changed that belief, and it's like they are no longer safe, or someone passed away, or like you lose a job, and that job made you feel like home, and you've been at that job for 20 years or whatever, and everyone gets laid off, but that was like your home. That was what kept you going every day. You drove 90 miles an hour to go to that person or whatever that felt like home. You couldn't wait to go see that person, and it's all of a sudden gone. So emotionally letting go can be extremely hard. And it's your emotions come before the Mercury, um because Mercury is more like thinking and stuff, but it's going to affect your cognition and your thought process. Can you focus and things like that? Indirect communication, already talked about that. Yeah, so that's a pattern that you just have to practice. If you do that a lot, you're going to sometimes create worse things for yourself and for other people. So just kind of be mindful if you're doing that and how you're doing that. You may hint, imply, or withdraw instead of speaking directly. Fear of confrontation or emotional rupture. Others may not always understand what you need because of that indirect communication, assuming like mind reading or telepathy, or, you expect other people to like be a mother to you and just kind of know what you want and just do it. Like you don't want to ask for these things to be done. Like you should know that I'm tired, like after a full day of work, and you should bring me my favorite meal or my favorite latte. Like, where is it? And now I'm going to be really frustrated because I'm working so hard, and you know whoever is just like relaxing on the couch, just enjoying the fruits of my labor, like the kid or whatever, and like you can't even help me with the groceries. I know that you heard the door that I'm coming home. Why didn't you come greet me and just grab the bags out of my hand? Where are you? Like those kind of things. um Others may not always understand what they need because you're just not communicating. Defensiveness when vulnerable. Emotional sensitivity can manifest as withdrawal, silence, or protectiveness. So be careful, like especially in relationships, you may kind of shut down, withdraw, go silent in order to maybe not even knowingly, maybe you do, in order to create a message, say like, oh, I'm upset. I don't want to, I don't want to talk to you because I'm upset, which, that's fair, if you need time and space to clear your mind, cool down, or whatever. But if you're doing that for an extensive, prolonged period of time, and some people are just not good at mind reading and knowing, like they can be like, okay, well, I'm just going to give you your time and space, and I'm going to work on my project, and like have no thought that you're suffering in silence. So be careful of that. Criticism feels deeply personal, or it's just like penetrating through that hard shell, depending on how it's said, how cutting it is, how intense it is, how long the duration is, can kind of like, it's basically shaming. So it can create tough skin and resilience, because the real world out there is not nice, and so can't be that sensitive, otherwise you're not going to really make it in the world. Or it's going to be really hard if you try to, but to an extent it can be pretty damaging. So that could have happened to you, which it just hurts really, really deep. because it's a water sign. And be careful if you are doing that to others, depending on your own mood, because that is projecting something that, whatever, you don't feel good. And if you don't have the maturity yet to withhold, because you know that it is hurtful, and you're like, well, I'm just going to give an excuse because I'm just not in the mood, and my parents did it to me, so I should be able to do it to other people. If you want to stop that cycle, if you want the world at a large scale to be any better, someone has to stop the cycle of craziness, and so if you're mature enough, if you have that level of emotional stability, self-awareness, then you can actually, be like, it takes a lot of strength to sometimes shut your mouth, or actually, say things that you don't want to say in the best way that you possibly can in that moment. Some negative or shadow expressions of this Mercury in Cancer or fourth house can be emotional reasoning as absolute truth. So whatever your emotions are, you can perceive it as that is the truth, and you don't care about how other people's perceptions or their feelings are. It's like your feelings matter more. So that can be negative. Passive or indirect communication. This can be negative. Withdrawal when hurt. Be careful how much you do that, because you can't solve a problem if you just shut down and withdraw, especially for an extensive period of time. Over attachment to the past. You can't progress, move forward, create new solutions, learn, or other people learn about you more. If you just want to get stuck in the past and stay there, then, some people will eventually get sick of it and move on, detach, break up with you, get sick of it, get frustrated, and be like, yeah, whatever, I'm just going to ignore you now because you won't move, and tried to heal things, but you didn't want to talk to me. So, okay, I guess we're getting a divorce, or now like everyone's going to suffer. The kids are going to suffer because you're just so stubborn. So be careful of things like that. Difficulty with emotional boundaries, and taking things personally. Taking things personally can be a sign of low self-esteem. So kind of analyze yourself, what's going on there. What can you do in order to help improve self-esteem? I always tell everybody, work out, go exercise. It's that daily dose of something that maybe you don't see results immediately, but in the long term, if you're consistent and you actually give decent effort, for yourself without going, you don't have to go crazy, then eventually the results will come, and that will, boost your self-esteem. I've seen it many, many times. I did it myself. It's in my book. I'm a personal trainer. Some people, it's like things take a shorter amount of time, and some people it takes years, so you go at your own pace. But if you don't feel like you have something of your own to be better, or you're really good at, that's unique to you, or whatever that is, then that's gonna, if something pokes you, you're gonna feel like, ugh, like, I know, like, I suck, or whatever, I'm no good, or whatever, and then you're gonna immediately project. But you're not gonna rationalize things like that. You're just gonna feel it and respond. The higher expression, or the positive points of this, of Mercury in Cancer fourth house, can be you have deep emotional intelligence. You can articulate complex emotional experiences, excellent listener, nurturer, or counselor archetype. You can understand the psychological impact of environment and memory, protective wisdom, kind of like a mom, grandparent, who's positive, because not all of them are the best out there. Knows how to create emotional safety for self and others, uses memory as guidance, not confinement, can, so that kind of means like using a past experience or whatever as, productive learning, not to like scold, like, remember this time, blah, 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 and you didn't listen to me and I should always be right. And you didn't listen. And so I'm going to keep pointing back to some past memory to make you feel like you don't know how to do things for yourself, or you shouldn't be independent because you're dumb or whatever. So it's using some kind of past memory so you can expand, uplift, grow, be better, not use some past memory or experience to put you down, shame you, control you, put you in a box, make you distrust yourself and make you distrust your own intuition of what you should do and listen to me or listen to whoever is doing that to you. So that's kind of what uses memory as guidance, not confinement, may mean. Can respond rather than react. Authentic emotional communication, expresses feelings clearly without defensiveness, allows vulnerability without losing stability. So, like, not expressing whatever hurt, frustration, whatever in a way, manner, tone of voice, vocabulary, words that are emotional, that can create more harm. You can express yourself in a calm state, like how I am talking to you right now, kind of like a parent, trying to explain someone or explain to their child who they know hasn't lived that many years as they have, the parent, and say like, okay, I know you don't know, or I know that you didn't mean it that way, but these things hurt, or mommy works really, really hard for the money that she makes, and you can't just lose things all the time, and we can't, that's something that we don't need to buy over and over and over again. Wouldn't you rather have this or have more, travel experiences, because the money has to go somewhere? Do you understand, little Susie or Timmy or whatever, being able to explain things like that. So that allows vulnerability without losing stability, creates emotionally secure relationships. Those are all the positive things of this kind of Mercury and Cancer fourth house things. Reframing belief systems. Some like old belief can be like, if I stay guarded, I won't get hurt. It's like that's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, a belief system that will eventually get you hurt. So say like safe connection is possible with boundaries. Just learn to communicate. An old belief system can be like, my feelings define reality. It's like, sure, it's real, like your feelings are valid and real, but that doesn't mean that the other person meant it that way, or that wasn't the intention. So it doesn't have to be the reality. You don't have to stay stuck in that. You can make it better. It's just an experience, and you can, you can change that experience and change the emotions of the experience, because you have a new belief system and it's reframed or perceived or interpreted in a new way. And now your emotions change because your mind has kind of opened up to a different like intellect or way of thinking, that now changes the emotion behind it. An old belief can be like, the past protects me, and instead say, the present allows new experiences, because the more things that you experience and learn, you're like, oh, I used to think that blah, 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 but now I think differently, and now it changes how you feel. An old belief can be like, emotional closeness requires self-sacrifice, and like, Healthy attachment includes self-preservation. So you can have your own individual self that's separate and unique and different, as long as you have communicated, especially the same kind of values, same kind of long-term life path, kind of what major things that you would want, like you don't have to always self-sacrifice, of course you have to do a little bit, anything that you have to compromise with at least one person, you have to self-sacrifice a little bit, or at some points you have to take turns, but that doesn't mean it should be at your detriment, or you feel drained or sad, depressed, because you always have to give, you always have to sacrifice, you always have to give your time, even if it's not literally money or anything. Like, you have to do for others and not nurture yourself. Don't feel guilty doing that. Some practical growth things that you can practice if you have any of these negative things that are creating cycles of things you don't want and you want to change that. Differentiate past emotional memory from present experience, like it's in the past, forgive it or let it go, practice letting it go. And focus on what you can do now. What can you be grateful or have gratitude for what you do have now, or what you can look forward to, or what you can strive for or look forward to, instead of staying stuck in the past. So that relates to depression a lot. Practice direct communication of needs, when the opportunity presents itself, see if you can practice it instead of going back to your old ways of doing things, and that's hard, even if it seems very trivial and dumb to someone else who's excellent at that. You have to practice it when the opportunity comes about. Otherwise, it's like falling behind in school. And then it feels impossible to catch up to your classmates and everyone who's just surpassed you, and that doesn't feel good, so you don't want that. Develop emotional boundaries without withdrawal. Ground feelings in the body to reduce rumination. Could be yoga, meditation, or anything that you can focus on, like coloring in a detailed thing kind of helps, takes focus off of your mind or thinking about the past, because you're so focused on focusing on coloring inside the lines, or knitting, sewing, building something, putting something together, where you have to focus on your hands and whatever you're doing with that, or painting. Focusing on something else kind of helps distract you from negative things of the past, or whatever. It doesn't even have to be negative, but if you get distracted easily, these are things that can help you stay present, whatever works for you. Create internal safety rather than relying only on external reassurance. So not needing that external validation or external nurturing from others in order to feel like you're doing the right thing, or feeling validated, or reassured. Doing that for yourself, or practice it's okay. Trusting yourself can be a thing. Allow emotions without assuming they require action, because not all emotions mean you have to do anything or you need to solve the problem. You just feel it. You can think it or whatever and be like, oh my God, I am so sad. Or I'm like, I'm freaking angry. But then the time will pass and that's fine. You don't have to actually do anything like, oh my God, I need to do something about this. You don't have to. It depends, but yeah. So the final closure of this really long video, once again, Mercury in Cancer is the mind that remembers in order to protect the heart. So its healing comes from learning that safety can exist without constant guarding. So yeah, your memory of the past and how things made you feel kind of creates a bigger and thicker shell. And so just to protect yourself, protect your heart and your emotions. And so you can have both. You don't have to clam up in your shell all the time to feel safe. You can learn to create healthy connections and healthy boundaries, and learning to say no so people don't overtake from you because they had no idea that you were already depleted, So that will be it for my Mercury in Cancer, Mercury in the 4th house video. I hope you liked it and enjoyed it, even though it's kind of long. Please like the video to help support. Leave a comment down below. It just helps the algorithm, whatever your experience is. Please be mindful that, you are publicly displaying yourself in your communication or whatever you're projecting out there, and I can usually see through it. And sometimes it's very interesting. And check out my book called Triggered to Change. It's available on Amazon, on Kindle, paperback, and hardcover. Keep in touch. Please subscribe. I may be doing one-on-one virtual counseling sessions in the future. If you feel like whatever I am presenting to you is kind of what you need in order to move through whatever you need to move through. I can never tell you what to do. I cannot predict the future. I can kind of analyze your birth chart and how your behaviors kind of are playing out. The more I get to know you, it's usually not just a one-time thing. That's just a birth chart reading. And it can vary on so many different ways. So I need more context, but keep in touch if I really open that up more. I do have a website. It is linked down below or as well as on my description page. So check that out. Please email me. That does not mean I'm going to email back your solutions or whatever for free. There's just not enough time in the day. If everybody did that, I have to protect myself as well. It will come at a charge. Otherwise, you get these free videos that you can learn till your eyes are full. I don't know, or you're satisfied. So, yep, that is it. My name is Natasha, and I'll check you out, or you'll check me out, I guess, next time. Okay, bye. So